on this week's Shoot the Messenger. From Heart of Africa to Good People, Great Country. Is it really possible to rebrand Nigeria? Hello, I'm Henry Bonsu and welcome to this week's Shoot the Messenger, an hour of passionate debate about key issues affecting Africans at home and abroad. We're live from our studios in London and we'd like you to have your say. We'll show you how later on. This week we're examining Africa's most populous nation, a land as rich in oil as it is in people, but hampered by a terrible image abroad for corruption, violence and bad governance. Now, 10 years after returning to civilian rule, Nigeria is taking a good hard look at itself. And not for the first time. From 2003 onwards, President Obasanjo's regime spent millions of dollars on the Nigeria Heart of Africa campaign. Last month, the Information Minister, Dora Akinyi, launched a new one, Nigeria, Good People, Great Nation. We'll be examining it with our special guests, two of whom are Nigerian. They are Alice Ukoko from the campaign group Women of Africa, and Alistair Soyedi from Rebranding Nigeria and, of course, Ben Television, and Ayo Johnson, an African affairs analyst who's from Sierra Leone. But first, let's take a look at the people. Something like 150 million strong and usually very, very proud of their identity. Why is this? I've been asking Femi Okutubo, a prominent Nigerian magazine publisher here in London.
Nigeria is a country which has a lot of resources. We're very proud of the country. In spite of all odds, yes, things could have been a lot better, but we're still proud of our achievements to date. As far as I'm concerned, that country is great. You're talking about, the world's most populous black nation. A country that can rank very heavily and highly among other nations of the world. You're talking about, a country, a people who, in whatever field of endeavor it is, rank among the highest in any part of the world. We've got to be proud of ourselves.
And still, you mention the great resources, and we think of the Niger Delta. People talk about the Ogoniland, Ken Sarawiwa, and of course, the massive repression, the crackdown that the military has imposed on so-called militants and the people in that area, lots of people being killed. Even though Nigerians have a lot to be proud of, isn't there also today in 2009 a lot for Nigerians to be ashamed of?
There definitely is. Like any any country in the world, every country has its own bad eggs or its bad sides, just as Nigeria does. Now, the situation in the Niger Delta is very unfortunate. We're hoping that things would change. But I think one area that has not really been emphasized so much is the fact that there is a lot of money that has been given to even governments in those parts of the country, which has not necessarily been, trickled down to those on the street. Because, when you hear the kinds of money, I don't have the figures with me now, but when you hear the kind of money that has actually been, given to governments in those areas, and when you compare that to the development that has actually happened in there, it's quite unfortunate that money has ended up in private pockets. So there is an issue in that respect. Again, I believe that companies like Shell and all these oil companies need to be doing a lot more in terms of putting back into the community. This is corporate social responsibility that happens in most other parts of the world. So why is Nigeria different? But like I said, in spite of all odds, in spite of the Niger Delta area, we can only but work towards making sure that things get better in that part of the country, like in every other part of the country, and hope that we will get to the perfect situation one day. And the truth is, we've got our own growing democracy. In fact, I would be tempted to say that things are a lot worse maybe among our parliamentarians in terms of expenses and so on. You know, and even when you hear some of the stories that have emerged from the UK in terms of someone claiming 68p for glue and all that, I'm sure the parliamentarians back in Nigeria will be laughing at what are these people on about when, you know, we get so much for our furniture allowance and all whatnot. But I think the reality is, you know, it's just a matter of time. You know, eventually we will get to a situation where there will be better discipline, and our people would be, you know, would be a better people in terms of less corruption and so on, not just in Parliament but in various arms of government and even in the nation as a whole.
We await that day with interest, but the problem is, for the Nigerians, you say 1 to 2 million here, some of them have gone underground, we know this. They're waiting for that change to happen. And that's one of the reasons, I suppose, why so many are here in this country. Isn't it an indictment on Nigeria, even though you say it's this great country with all this oil wealth, so much splendor, so much pride, so much dignity, that nearly 2 million or so are living in this country? That's an indictment, isn't it?
I would disagree with you, Henry. I don't believe it's an indictment. I believe it's a testimony to the great resources that our country is endowed with. If you have, you know, if you have Nigerians in various parts of the world who are not just living in the country, who are not benefit cheats, who are not relying on the system, but who themselves are the very best at what they do in terms of the very best doctors, the very best nurses, the very best you know, managers in various fields of endeavor.
It's even claimed the very best fraudsters. Remember, who gave the world 419?
Trust me, you know, in fact, it's something I've usually said, that Nigerians are extremely good at what they do. Whether it's in terms of the positive, Nigerians are really good at it. Whether it's even in terms of the negatives, quite unfortunately, our people have, you know, they do very well at what they do. But what I think I must emphasize on, and this is extremely important, every country has its own bad eggs, and it's extremely, you know, unfair for Nigeria to be painted as a country of fraudsters just because you have less than, not even up to 0.01% of people who have committed one fraud or the other. You know, you hear stories that there are universities in Nigeria where you can actually go and study fraud. No such things exist. You know, and I think that is the greatest level of ignorance on part of these Western journalists. The reality is Nigeria is a very good country. We've got people who, you know, who are really endowed, who are blessed, and who are contributing not just to the development of Nigeria itself, but to the world as a global village.
Femi Okutubo, very passionate publisher of the Trumpet newspaper in London. Well, let's hear from our guests. Alice Ukoko, first of all, how proud are you to be a Nigerian? As proud as Femi?
Well, the truth is that Nigeria as a country is great. There is no doubt about it. The people, Nigerians worldwide, are making huge contribution to the development of the world. Yes, we know that.
But are you personally proud to be a Nigerian woman?
Well, I would say proud, but we have issues with Nigeria. And we know that a home, for instance, if the father is not there to run his home, the mother does not take responsibility for running the home, then of course the children take charge, because nature does not like vacuum. What we have in Nigeria today is not that Nigerians should not be proud of Nigeria. The issue is, if you are so proud that you forget that things are not all right, you have forgotten to put your house in order. Nigerians need to wake up and realize that greatness is not gotten on a platter of gold. Nigeria has the potential to be great, but is Nigeria great? That is the issue. We have great people.
What about that then? It's kind of like an empty pride. Yes, 150 million people, Nigerians all over the world, very, very good at what they do, from being doctors, lawyers, scientists, through to fraudsters, but actually it's an empty pride.
No, I won't agree that it's an empty pride. I'm absolutely and totally committed to being a Nigerian. In spite of all the challenges, in spite of everything that is in that country, I have no other choice. I hold a green passport, right? And what we're doing is, without any doubt, agreeing with what Femi has said. Likewise as well, there's no country that doesn't have the same issue. And I don't need to go into what's actually happening in the UK.
Some people say